But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that, bang!
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big Pete, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audio book, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
New York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio, episode number 120. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, alongside my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and welcome to the New York Muscle Radio podcast, the best muscle building podcast on iTunes. Today's topic, how to become pound for pound the strongest in the world with Suzanne Hartwig-Gary. Big guy, we got an exciting episode today, man. This is the strongest woman in the world coming on. She actually happens to be the sweetest woman in the world, too, because I hung out with her when I went to Lane's VIP camp, and really a great woman. And she's so little. And then when I read these numbers, like her stats, which I'll read later on in the podcast, I couldn't believe what I was reading. And so pound for pound, can you imagine being pound for pound the strongest in the world?
Yeah, man, you told me a lot about her, and I, to be honest, didn't know too much. I heard the name before, that was about it. I know she has a pretty big following in terms of the powerlifting circle. Like you said, pound for pound, the strongest in the world. And, you know, from what you told me about her, she'd be a really good guest. I know you said you learned a lot from her, even just spending one weekend with her. So I think getting her on here, we could definitely offer our listeners a lot of value on this podcast.
Yeah, it'd be cool, but let's not jump too far ahead there, man. But what's going on? What's new with your life?
Well, right now it is the Olympia weekend. So right now I'm actually getting ready tonight to watch the live stream of the Olympia and have some pizza with that. That's going to be my Saturday night. Exciting, right?
Are you going to do that by yourself?
I might invite a friend over or two.
Yeah, we're actually in the New York Muscle Radio studio, guys. So Pete likes to just talk about himself only, and he just always forgets to include me in there. So we're actually going to stream live, and you guys are going to be listening to us after the fact. But if you don't like us on Facebook already, facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio, we're going to go live right before they announce the top 5, so you guys can get our reactions and kind of watch it with us. So I think that'd be really cool to do. So it's a little too late for that now for you guys listening to this, but make sure you go on our Facebook page and like it, because that's going to be we've always put out good stuff, and you never know when we're going to go live.
Yeah, it's usually a last-minute decision. We don't really plan this stuff out too well. You know, that's our style, but we're going to be going live, and if you follow us along on there, you'll definitely get up-to-date information on everything else that's going on, so it's worth a follow.
So we're making pizzas after this. What are you making? You're going to chef it up, Chef Boyardee?
Well, yeah, and I like to say in my house it's Chef Boyard Pete, but I'm gonna make a few different pizzas. It's definitely one of my favorite things to make lately. So many different ways we do it. Sometimes we'll do it with extra chicken on top. Sometimes turkey bacon. Sometimes ground beef. Sometimes turkey. Sometimes just straight up chicken. Tonight, I think I'm gonna make a regular pizza with some extra turkey bacon on top. I'm feeling that.
Yeah, I actually did that last time, and that was really good, too. But so, again, guys, we're still looking for people to come on that podcast that we talked about in the last episode. We need 3 to 5 people who are interested in doing a free coaching call with us, and it would be live on the podcast. This way we could kind of answer your questions live, and so you guys listening to this can learn how coaches dissect someone's problem and the solution to the problem, too. I think it would make for a cool episode. So, if you're interested in having that done for you free, FREE, head on over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio, and just comment on the thread that I wrote on it, and you'll be considered. And I need some people, so I'll start messaging you guys. I figure I'll do it by next week.
Yeah, and I also just want to mention, too, we had a few people that submitted it to us, and we do have a few people we're going to reach out to about coming on, but a few people did reach out to us, and they were saying what their question would be, and I just want to clarify that it's not a question and answer type segment. It would be specific to your current training and nutrition protocols and your goals, and will help you dissect exactly what you're doing and what you should be doing. So the idea is to get somebody who would come to us and say, you know, I'm trying to lose body fat right now. I'm 200 pounds. I'm consuming X amount of calories, doing X amount of cardio, and my body weight has stalled right now. What do I need to do to switch it up? You know, what's your problem?
Yeah, so that's what we're pretty much looking for. So again, head on over to our Facebook page and submit if you're interested. Dude, your fucking house is a mess. Your desk, I should say. It's a fucking mess, man. You don't clean up after yourself. Pig Pete.
Well, I got a bunch of water bottles here in front of my computer because I got to stay hydrated, especially when you're on the podcast. So I got
They're
a lot.
full.
Yeah, you know how many people that I know complain to me about that? It bothers so many people that I don't finish water bottles. I finish about three. I finish about 3/4 of them, and generally I just for some reason grab another one. So they sit around.
I'm so distracted. It's so funny. You know, when I first came here the first time to record one of the earlier episodes of the podcast, everything was like neat. Now it's like 120 episodes later and everything's a fucking mess.
Hey man, that's what happens. You know, when you're working hard, you don't pay attention to everything else. And I'm a one-track mind type person when I'm onto something. So if I'm sitting around working, I'll let everything else just kind of go to shit, to be honest with you. And as you can see, due to my desk over here, I got some cleaning up to do. It's funny because my desktop icons are all over the place too. I used to have my desktop nice and organized. It's all over the place too. But I always say this: there's a difference between being organized and being neat. You know, a lot of people think it's the same thing. I'm organized. I'm just not neat. Meaning, I know where everything is if I have to find it. It's not neat though.
You're a mess all around in life, just a mess. But guys, listen, I have I guess a question. I don't know of a question, but I need some help. Me and my co-host here have been kind of thinking about doing a possible seminar, like a live in-person seminar in New York somewhere. We didn't really iron out the details. We were thinking about getting some names to come. I'm not going to mention who because it's just all up in the air ideas right now. But regardless, it would be us giving a seminar, either a 1-day or a 2-day. And I need some help. I need to know if you guys would be interested in that. If anybody in the New York area would like to attend that, or even if not in the New York area, if you would like to attend like a day seminar type of a deal, send us a message. You know, you could send us an email at newyorkmuscleradio@gmail.com. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at abfitness. Don't even bother reaching out to him because he'll forget to tell me until I ask. So just ask me and let me know if that's something you're interested in. I mean, we've really been thinking about that. And we know we have a lot of knowledge. We gave it 120 episodes worth of good quality information. And I think if we break it down into a cool seminar, I think it could be mind-blowing for a lot of people.
Yeah, and let us know also. Like we said, we're talking to a few people, possibly getting them on board with this. If you guys have anybody specific that you do want us to reach out to, let us know about that too. Because by popular demand, if we get somebody on here, then we'll let them know that there is definitely an audience out there for them. So if anybody specific you want on here, we do have, like he said, a couple people lined up that we are in touch with about making this happen. But let us know who you guys want to hear from.
Yeah, I just think it's another way to help you guys. And I know when I go to any seminar, whether it's a business seminar or whether it's a fitness seminar, I always walk away with something more than I ever thought I would. You know, it's different from when you learn it versus when you're actually in the atmosphere of people who are successful and have done it, you know, so much that you actually take away so much more. So I want to be able to have that aha moment for a lot of people. So, I mean, I think we do that with the podcast, but I want to have that in-person aha moment, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be a really cool event. I'm actually excited just talking about it because I think there's a lot of potential out there and nobody really has done anything as far as what we're planning to do in the New York area. So it'll be really cool. It'll be a first time thing. And like everything else we do, we're going to try and make it the best that we can. And if it all goes as planned, then obviously there's going to be something that could possibly have a future to continue from there.
Yeah. So let us know on that. All right, big guy, let's move on to the shout-outs portion. Your turn now. I'm always doing the shout outs. So I'm giving them to you. So again, today the shout outs are going to be done via the reviews of the podcast. So if you're interested in getting a shout out, you have to review our podcast and don't forget to subscribe. 5-star reviews are the only ones that get read. So go ahead, big guy.
All right, let's give a shout out to David Dart 01. He said, go ahead and click subscribe. Anthony and Pete really crush it on every podcast. These podcasts are loaded with personality, humor, and cold hard facts about what really works. I'm a fitness fanatic and have been training in multiple sports over 30 years, but I actually learned something new on every show. I bought their book, Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code, and it's straightforward and has made the difference in my nutrition. I'm definitely seeing the gains. Thanks, guys, and keep the goods coming. So shout out to David Dart. I'm glad he likes the book and he likes the podcast. So I'm glad that he's been listening and he's been reading and he's been applying it. So he's been getting the results.
The gains.
So I also want to give a shout out to Joshua Kularis. That's what it looks like to me. He said, love the podcast. One of my favorite shows to listen to on the way to the gym, work, or even morningless cardio. Love the entertainment from the duo as well as the informative without the BS. Still waiting for the arm routine to get the arms jacked. Also, great inside information on natural bodybuilding. Well, the wait is over for the arm program, so if you haven't picked it up already, Joshua, definitely give it a go. It's on our website. The 12-week arm experiment is available for the arm gains.
NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/products. You're terrible at doing a pitch. You know that?
Hey man, we have our strengths and weaknesses, and that's why you do all the pitching.
Yeah, but I'm like the sleazy salesman, and you're just like the nice guy in the back, a good cop, bad cop.
I am the nice guy.
Yeah, I know.
Shout out to Kaboom Boom Boom. He said, refreshing. If you follow the science-based community, things can start to become repetitive. These guys do a great job of keeping these topics new and interesting. And, I just want to mention that I really appreciate that comment because the fact is so much of this stuff just does get repetitive. And the reason it's repetitive because one person puts out information and then everybody on the internet copies it. Somebody like Lane Norton will put out a new video or a podcast or a post on protein timing, and then everyone else will be an expert on it, but they're just reiterating the same thing. And, we don't like to do that here. We like to basically break down the information in such a way that we follow and what we like to tell other people and explain that for you guys. So we're not going to be the type where if Lane says it, we're just going to repeat it, or if anybody else says it, we're just going to repeat it. So that's what we like to do here, and I'm glad he notices that, and I'm glad that he appreciates that. So one more shout out on the review section from Gotham Tech. He said he's listened to several podcasts and I'm addicted. Love their show. They discuss good topics and have good guests too.
So you see that? So again, if you guys want a shout out, head on over to iTunes, click that 5-star review, leave the review for your chance for a shout out. You never know where we're going to pull those shout outs from. It could be an Instagram at ABFitness, at Jacked Fitness. Could be on our Facebook page. Facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio. See all the how I get dramatic? You're just like, yeah, you could pick up the arm program now. It's available.
Yeah, guys, if you want the arm program, it's available.
All right, move on to the listener question of the day, man. Where the hell's the mouse? Oh, I got it. See the technical difficulties. All right, so again, if you guys have a question, you want us to answer it, submit it on our website, NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/listener question. So today's question, I forgot to write the guy's name. Oh, it's Gino. All right, we'll be back on his last name. Pull it up. Oh, God. All right, so the question is, love to hear on the show, what about longevity in bodybuilding with heavy weights? Since I started listening, I've ditched the bro circuits and started powerlifting like you guys prescribed. The results are amazing, but I hear both of you talking about creaky knees and backs, and I also see how gingerly Arnold Schwarzenegger walks around. Knees bowed out like he just crapped his pants. I don't know if Arnold actually walks like that. Arnold's actually in pretty good shape for his age. I think he's over 60, 62 or 63, something like that. So I don't think he actually walks like that. So anyway, obviously health and bodybuilding are different, but how do you guys plan to sustain this life? Love to get the right advices. Love the show. Thanks, guys. So, and this was from Gino. It's in the messages, buddy. All right, we'll be back on his name. But anyway, so he basically wants to know about longevity in the sport and how you're going to, sustain this. Listen, no matter what sport you're doing, whether it's, football, basketball, running, biking, there's always going to be some type of give and take. Basketball players suffer from knee pain. Football players practically break themselves in half. Hockey players break themselves in half. And these are just the consequences for playing the game. And that's just part of the sport. So, I get what you're saying about longevity in the sport, but you're always going to have some type of, whether it's a nagging injury or whether it's always kind of going to be something. I hate to burst your bubble and pretend that, everything is going to be hunky-dory. It's not. You're always going to have something that's going to bother you and whatnot. But overall, I know people who don't even work out who experience pain all over their body. When clients first come to me, I'm a personal trainer also, and they first come to me and they don't exercise at all, they're my co-host, he's got to go to the bathroom, so he left. But yeah, I have normal people who come to me who say, that they have pain also. And they don't even do anything. Neck pain, back pain, from the way they sleep, their work. So there's always going to be something, a give and take.
Yeah, there's always going to be aches and pains no matter what you do, whether you work out or whether you don't work out. And to be honest with you, I think longevity in something like bodybuilding or weight training comes down to taking care of your body outside the gym, not only inside the gym. A lot of injuries will come from something that stemmed from what you're doing outside the gym. For instance, if you sit behind a desk all day and you have really bad posture all day, when you go in the gym and you're stiff and your muscles are tight in certain areas and you try and get under a heavy squat bar or do deadlifts, your form's terrible, and that's due to what you're doing outside the gym. You'll end up getting yourself injured, and it's not necessarily the squats or deadlifts that did it. It was sitting behind a desk all day. So I think keeping your body healthy in general is going to help you with longevity, whether you do weight train or not. So for people who don't even work out, I would give the same information and same advice. I would tell you, listen, if you sit behind a desk all day, if you have a lifestyle where your body is not in great shape, do things to prevent injury.
Yeah. Overall, how you could stay healthy in this sport is obviously focusing on mobility, focusing on taking care of your body. If you notice something is nagging a little bit, maybe trying to fix that. I'd recommend picking up Kelly Starrett's book, Becoming a Supple Leopard. That's a really good book for helping with just anywhere in your body if you have any little bit of pain, applying that type of mobility stuff to it. Also taking preventative measures, like maybe taking yoga twice a week. I was really good at doing that when I got hurt. I was really consistently doing it. And then I kind of slacked because I feel better now. But I got to get back to that too. I think that you can never focus on too much on mobility and stretching and prehab. So that all stuff actually plays a huge role. So make sure you're doing that kind of stuff for longevity. But like I said, man, I know people who don't even work out who have worse pains and worse things than what I have, what my co-host has, or what people who have been lifting for over 30, 40 years have. So you're going to have to give and take a little bit there. But think about how great you'll look with creaky knees,
Yeah, it is funny because I could tell you I've had my fair share of injuries, nothing serious, but believe it or not, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them were not caused from the actual weight training. I've never actually experienced an injury squatting. I've never experienced an injury deadlifting. I've tweaked my back just from getting up out of a chair in the wrong position or picking something up off the floor. Not severely, but I've been under, 400 plus pounds on a squat bar, deadlift bar, and that's never hurt my back before. It's never hurt my knees before, but sitting in a chair for too many hours, then getting up, my knees might be in pain, my lower back might be in pain. So yeah, prehab is definitely the biggest thing that you want to pay attention to, especially as you get older. And me and Anthony are not older, but I can, if I compare sitting in a chair for a long period of time when I was 13 years old, now I'm 27, my body gets stiff very easily. So as you get older, you're going to want to pay attention to this stuff more.
Yep. So I think that pretty much answers this question. I think we covered it. Like I said, just take care of yourself. If you start noticing something, do a lot of prehab, begin icing. Don't be afraid to ice it. Again, I know people who talk about, I have pain here, but they never do anything actively to fix it. So again, if something's bothering you, put ice, put heat, do what you got to do to really fix it. But that's what I'm going to say there on that. So I think we pretty much covered everything. I think we were I'm ready to jump into this with Susie, man. I think you're going to love talking to her, and I think everyone's going to get a lot out of what she's saying. So We'll take a short commercial break. Do you have anything you want to say? You look like you got something to say.
No, I'm just excited to get to this podcast. I want to hear what she has to say because from some of the numbers I've heard she put up, she could hang well with any of us in the gym at 100 pounds less body weight.
Let's just put it this way. When she mentions how much she actually first squatted, you're going to get depressed. Just put it that way.
I know those feels.
All right, maybe you can fucking clean up this desk too in the meanwhile. All right, guys, we'll be right back.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big P. Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down that tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
Hey guys, it's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, and I just wanted to announce that my brand new personal training facility is now open. I'm currently taking on new clients in the Long Island, New York area. If you're interested in working with the best personal trainer in the business, head on over to abfitnesstrainer.com and sign up for your free consultation. Then you can understand why bodybuilding.com has named me Personal Trainer of the Month. All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 120. How to become pound for pound the strongest in the world with Suzanne Hartwig-Gary. So, again, I'm going to give you guys a little short introduction about Susie before we talked to her here. Because Susie, I met her at Lane's camp just about a month ago. And Susie's a multinational and world champion powerlifter. She's a USAPL Women's Hall of Fame member, powerlifting coach, SSPT co-founder. And Susie has set such records as holding 2 Masters World Records equipped, including a 402-pound squat, a 975-pound total. Susie also has the personal best bench press of 226 pounds and a 374-pound in the deadlift. Not only that's equipped, guys. Now, raw, this is a belt only, equally impressive, holds the IPF Open World Record in the squat at 337 pounds, as well as a personal best of 181 pounds in the bench press, 347 pounds in the deadlift, and an 846-pound total. Now, wait, it gets better. What's crazy is that she only weighs 114 pounds. So pound for pound, Susie's one of the strongest women in the world and has literally dominated her weight class for 2 decades. Not to mention that Susie is a young 47 years of age. So let's welcome the world's strongest woman to the New York Muscle Radio podcast. Susie, how are you? Thank you for coming on. It was kind of a long introduction, but it has to be. I have to make it more dramatic. I should have really. Maybe
Well,
Pete, you could edit something cool in there, make it dramatic.
We'll put
go.
something in there.
Well, I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And life is treating me wonderfully. I'm getting ready for the USAPL Raw Nationals in a month. I'm feeling happy, healthy, and ready to go.
Yeah, it's in Atlanta this year, right?
It is, and there's over 1,100 people registered.
Wow. How many were there last year? Because I remember last year was big too.
There was a little over 1,100 last year, and I believe 990 some showed up.
Wow. Wow, so that's exciting. What are you aiming to do there?
Well, I'd like to unofficially break my world record in the squat and then up my recent bench PR and deadlift PR. So, of course, I want to go in and either win or place really high in the open, and I'd like to dominate the Masters, of course.
Crazy, crazy. So, Susie, tell our listeners your story and how you got started in powerlifting. How did this all begin for you?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll give you a shortened version.
And we like the long story.
Oh, okay. Well, the first time I ever lifted weights and realized that I was strong, I was in about 7th or 8th grade, and there were some guys in my friend's basement trying to pick up this bar with weights on it. None of them could do it, and we were all teasing them, and I was such a tomboy. One of the guys was like, "All right, Smarty, you do it." I walked over thinking I wouldn't pick it up, but I picked it up. It was 100 and some pounds, and I was probably like 12 years old. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I want to lift weights. So I asked my mom for a weight set because she had bought my brother one once, but he'd moved out of the house. And she bought me 3-pound dumbbells because she didn't want me to hurt myself. And
This was at 12 years old?
This was, I think it was probably around 12, maybe 13.
Okay.
But then when I was 14, my freshman year in high school, our track coach taught us how to squat and bench on Monday. We practiced on Wednesday. And then Friday, he tested us. And I weighed 98 pounds, squatted 200, and benched 100.
Oh, my God.
So I was like, wow, this is really cool. Because if you could do triple body weight with your squat and your bench combined, you got your name painted on the wall, like 2 or 3 football players a year would get it. And so I wanted my name up there, and they're like, we were just testing to see who would be strong for upper and lower body and track. We don't have room for the girls to lift in here because it was such a small gym. So I was pretty much told I couldn't lift and didn't start again until my 5th year of college. The summer before my 5th year, I worked at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, and they had a universal machine in the basement, and some of the guys were lifting on it. And I went over, I was like, hey, can I work out with you guys? And they're like, sure. Like 15, 20 minutes later, one of the guys is like, wow, you're strong. You should be a power lifter. And I was like, cool, what's that? And my last 3 months of college, I finally found the powerlifting club and trained for 6 weeks. And then I competed 3 times over the next 3 weeks. And my total was 90 pounds less than the girl who won my weight class at the ADFPA Nationals. So I was like, that's it. I got to do this. And I was bit. And I actually moved from South Dakota to Maryland, actually to Virginia first, to be around other powerlifters so I could try powerlifting for a couple years, I thought.
Wow. That's
pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah. So it kind of came natural. Is that pretty much how it always was?
Yeah. I mean, I work hard, but genetically I am built to powerlift, and I'm short. That always helps. I've always had big legs for my size. That helps. But it was natural because I didn't know what I was doing. And of course it wasn't to specs the first time I did it in high school, but who at 14 years old and 98 pounds benches their body weight and squats double their body weight the third time they try?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing. So wait, so how did you end up from going into that first couple meets to, I mean, obviously where you are today? So talk about from then to now, because you kind of left that whole part out. There's a lot happened in between.
Well, you asked me how I got into it. You didn't ask me about anything else yet, so I was waiting for more questions. So I moved out here because back when I first started in 1991, there wasn't really internet. And if you were going to go to a powerlifting meet, you saw a flyer up in a gym or a friend told you about it. There was Powerlifting USA magazine, though, and I got one and saw there was a lot of lifters in Pennsylvania, Maryland, in this area. And I had thought about being a nanny once in the summer, and I had information for this area, and I was going to call, to be a nanny again, and couldn't find any information. It's, again, not like it is now on the internet. And I remembered the phone number 1-800-BE-A-NANNY, and it was a number in Burke, Virginia. And so I interviewed with 5 families, and I moved out here to lift weights and started at a place called World Gate Athletic Club, which was pretty much a lot of wealthy people just working out. And then also some of the Washington Redskins, I later found out, trained there, and me. I trained there because as a nanny, I got a free membership with the family. And I just started lifting weights, but I didn't really have a plan or a process. I just knew I was strong and I wanted to get stronger, and I'd enter any competition I could find and just asked people who looked like they knew what they were doing and asked other competitors at competitions, what they suggested that I do. And I was just lucky that God gave me the genetics for the strength, because the first year or so that I lived out here, I didn't know many other power lifters. And so I just kind of winged it. And actually someone who used to do bodybuilding at the gym came up to me one day and he said, you're really strong and you told me you do powerlifting meets, but I don't see you train your squat and your deadlift, your lower body very frequently. I only see you train your upper body. And again, I didn't understand things like I do now. And I was like, oh, but my bench is so weak compared to my squat and my deadlift, and everybody can. He said, well, compared to other people, how is it? And I said, well, it's pretty good, but I guess all the girls have really weak benches. I didn't understand that I was actually benching a lot, but the only people that lifted in the gym were guys. So I thought my bench was so weak. So I was benching 4 times a week every time I went in the gym. And once a week I'd squat, once a week I'd deadlift. And he was like, well, I'm not a power lifter, but here, let me help you. And, told me to squat once a week and deadlift once a week, bench twice a week, and kind of helped me out that way. And then through the years, a couple years later, I started training with Kirk Karwoski. Do you know Captain Kirk?
Yes.
Yes. Started working out with him. In the meantime, I had other people. When I was successful, I had different trainers come up and say, hey, can I coach you? So in the beginning, I was like, okay, because, I don't have a coach and I don't know what I'm doing. And then after a while, I realized some of them didn't know what they were doing either. But there was a gym called Maryland Athletic Club, and it was the mecca for powerlifting in our area. And Kirk was there, and there was a bunch of other lifters. At one point, I think it was 1999, when I went to the IPF Women's World Championships. The team consisted of 10 women, and 3 were from our gym.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was really blessed that I moved out here, because if I'd stayed in South Dakota, I'm pretty positive I wouldn't be where I am, because there just wasn't a lot of people to learn from.
Yeah, I was curious about that, because as you mentioned, back then obviously the internet wasn't around, and your source of information, like you said, maybe came from Powerlifting Magazine or the few people in the gym that did do powerlifting. But since it was so hard to really gather as much information as it is today, did you find that training was very different for everybody back then? Everyone kind of had their own style of training. Did people train similarly for powerlifting? What was it like?
Actually, back then, I found that almost everyone trained the same way. At least in our gym, when you have people like Kirk, who was a 6-time world champion, and it was working for him, and he told you what to do, and it was working for everybody else, and they were getting stronger, that's what you did. So back then, a lot of people just did progressive overload. I think probably for 6 or 7 years in a row, I would just plan on getting a little stronger the next time. And if I was 8 weeks from a meet, I'd back up 10 pounds a week on the squat, and I'd just go up, and back then we squatted once a week, we deadlifted once a week, and we benched twice a week. And it's completely different now, but that's what people knew. That's all people knew from the successful people, what they were doing. And so that's what most of the people did. And nowadays I find that people do a huge variety of training programs.
Yeah, it was almost similar to when I started bodybuilding training. It was pretty much the same thing. The biggest guy in the gym said, oh, you got to do this, and that's kind of how it was, because the internet wasn't what it is now. So
exactly.
So it's kind of like, if you're surrounded, and it's good that you surrounded yourself with, people that were better than you, because that's the only way you improve yourself, Otherwise,
exactly,
you can't fly with the eagles if you're hanging out with the chickens.
Right. And I don't want to be a big fish in a little pond.
Yeah.
I would rather be a little fish or a medium fish working my way up in the ocean. When I first started, I did ADFPA, which was the American Drug-Free Powerlifting Association. And back then there were really 2 main ones. It was that and the USPF, which was the U.S. Powerlifting Association. Mm-hmm. That used to be the IPF affiliate. And so my first couple years, I did the ADFPA because I looked at them as the semi-pros and the USPF as the pros. Because when I looked at the numbers, the people in the ADFPA weren't totaling near what the people in the USPF were. But after I won in the ADFPA and I went to their world championships, the WDFPFs, I I had actually gotten hurt and was sick when I went to the World Championships, and I won by like 100 pounds.
No problem.
No, but that was that. But that made me think I don't want to compete here anymore.
Yeah.
Because at nationals, had I totaled what I totaled at Worlds, I would have gotten third or fourth.
Oh, wow.
Because I had a big class that was strong in the U.S., but the U.S. had a lot of people in the ADFPA for that time, but a lot of the other countries didn't have nearly as many because the IPF was the big place to be, and that's where most countries had one federation, and they all led to the IPF. So I was happy when I won the first year, but I felt like, wow, I didn't do nearly as well. I wouldn't have won at nationals, and I won at Worlds. I want to compete against the people that are the best. So I switched to the USPF, and I took second or third for about 3 or 4 years, probably, before I was able to actually win. But I was really happy because I was getting stronger, and there were people that were making me strive to be better. So like you said, it was like, did I want to stick around somewhere where I could win pretty easily if I made it to the Worlds, or did I want to go somewhere where I'd have to bust my butt just to win nationals?
Yeah. I mean, and look, your accolades speak for themselves, so it worked out good. So how did you meet Gary and end up kind of where you are now? Because I know you guys own your own gym. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Matt and I met each other in 1995, probably. He saw me at a powerlifting meet, and I don't think we actually met at that meet. But then we met later at Maryland Athletic Club.
It was love at first squat?
No, we were both dating other people at the time. So we were just really good friends. After our gym split up, people went a lot of different directions, and then life brought us back together when I was training for a national competition and really needed somebody to spot me in the squat before I headed off for Christmas. And I called all my old powerlifting friends, and he came and helped spot me, and then found out my training partners had actually quit competing, so I was going to a Golds and just getting whoever to help spot me, which is not really the best thing to do.
Yeah.
And wrapping myself and doing all that, trying to teach people to put a bench shirt on because I was doing Equip then. That was crazy.
Big then, right? Equip that was pretty much powerlifting. I think the raw movement's relatively new, right?
Correct. Back then, you could lift raw if you wanted, but it was only one division, and it was a division that allowed equipment. Okay. So you could lift raw, but you were at a huge disadvantage. But then Matt and I became best friends for a while, and then after that, we started dating, and lo and behold, we married and opened a gym.
That's really good. Matt's a great guy too. So you guys are like a power couple.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, he really, really knows his stuff. He always jokes around. He says, I'm much stronger, pound for pound, but he can outlift me. So that's a good thing. But I say he's way smarter than me when it comes to training and just knowing all the methodologies and stuff like that. He studies it all the time. So.
All right, so I want to hear a little bit more about your greatest accomplishment in powerlifting. What you think out of all the things you've accomplished, what was the best thing? And I also want to know if you had any setbacks, if you had any major injuries or anything that really derailed you where you kind of second guessed this.
Okay, so let's start with the best. I don't know, because at the moment when certain things happened, they were just totally awesome. When I broke my first master world record, to know that I was the best, even though it had to be someone over 40, but the best someone had ever done over 40, that was like really awesome. Do
you know what the record was before you broke it?
The record for the squat before I broke it was 369 pounds. Actually, the first one I broke was bench. It was 220, and I benched 222.
Okay.
And the squat was 369, and I did 372. But then I think later that year I hit 374, and then I hit 380.
Wow.
And then before I took my hiatus from Equipped, I hit 402. That was like a lifetime. Wow, it would be so awesome if I could be that strong one day. So when I hit the 402, I decided it was time to step away from the Equipped for a while because it was really hard to keep up the Raw and the Equipped together. For instance, in 2012, I decided not to do the Arnold Sports Festival because taking that out, I had 3 world championships and 2 national championships that year over 5.5 months, which is insane. Insane. Because the end of May, I did the Equipped Nationals. I'm sorry, I did the Equipped Worlds. No, 2012. I apologize. See, there's too much going on.
You won so much, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah. Oh, well, 2012, I did Equipped Nationals in May. And about 3.5 weeks later, I did Raw Worlds. And then about 5 weeks later, I did the Raw Nationals. And then 4 weeks later, I had the Master Equipped Worlds. And 4 weeks later, I had the Open Equipped Worlds. So it was just crazy doing, and I was, I don't know, 43 years old at the time or something. So now I moved on to just concentrating on the Raw. And I'd say one of the things I'm most proud of is being inducted into the USAPL Women's Hall of Fame. It means a lot to me. But also being able to, at 47 years old, have the open world record in the Raw squat is really cool.
Did they give you something for that? Did you get like a plaque or anything?
For being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I did get a plaque. And if you break a world record now, they send you a certificate.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, do you have it in the gym or do you have it in your house? Is that like a gym thing to show everybody?
No, I'll be honest. It's tucked on a shelf.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, so let's hear the setback. I'm curious.
Okay,
how a champion comes back from a setback. So I love these stories.
So my first big setback was in 2003. So that was an eventful year. In 2003, I won the Open IPF World Championships, which was like a dream of dreams. Another thing I didn't mention. I honestly, drug-free, thought if I could be top 3 in the world, it would be awesome. And I ended up being number 1. And I won bench nationals that year. And then 2 months later, I went from benching 175 for reps to wheeling the bar with only 65 pounds on it off my chest.
Wow.
And I had a bulging disc in my neck that caused me not to have the signal going into my left hand. So my tricep extension was not working. And I thought, well, it might get better. And I tried doing some things. I was still able to squat and deadlift, but I lost the feeling in a couple of my fingers. I couldn't do any pressing movements. And I had some people that wanted me to do surgery, but then I found a really good physical therapist who said, all right, if you don't train for 2 months and you don't work for a month and you do all these exercises and you come back really slowly, I don't think you should powerlift again, but I know you're going to, so I'll help you do it. And it was hard because I didn't get to compete to defend my national or my world championship that year. But I knew that if I pushed myself, even if I was able to get through it and get some of my strength back, I could make myself injured for the rest of my life. And it just wasn't worth it. So I took almost a year without competing in 2004 and just built myself back up. There were a lot of exercises I used to do that I couldn't do. So my bench and my deadlift took a while to get back to the strength that I had been before. But I had told myself I just wasn't going to stop competing until I was at least as strong as I was before I got hurt the first time. And it took a while, but if you really want something and you're not afraid of putting in the hard work, you can do it. have to know that it takes patience. And for me, it took a lot of faith. I did a lot of praying, and I told God, I will work as hard and as long as you want. Just give me a sign if I'm not supposed to do this. But if you don't give me a sign, I'm going to keep pushing until I can do it again.
And do you have any pain now from that, or is it all done?
I believe it's all done. The big thing with the bulging disc is if you're misaligned and that's causing the bulge, and you have different muscles that are too strong, too weak, and out of place, if you can get everything back into place, then you can still function as you did before. The only thing is certain exercises, I don't do overhead presses nearly as much as I used to. I quit doing any shrugging, different things that helped and aided my deadlift and my bench press. But whenever I did them, I would start to feel tingling in my hand again. Mm-hmm. And so I just quit doing them, or do them lighter and not as much. I haven't really tried pushing them, because every time I've tried pushing it, I start to get some symptoms again. Yeah. So that's the only really big one that I've had that was like a huge setback. And then in 2012, when I had all those competitions in a row, I had irritated my right shoulder at my AC joint, and I kept competing. And ironically, about 2 months when I was done, I was doing a lot of volume and lightweight. And I guess the ligament was super weak, so I separated my AC joint. Ugh. Yeah, so I didn't do the Arnold that year because I just knew I was in too much pain and it wasn't a good idea. And then I just kind of have been trying to build my bench press back up. It's not an excuse, but when you're 47 and you're female, the bench is the thing that usually starts to go downhill first anyway. So I'm just trying to build my strength back to where it was before I separated my shoulder.
So let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about when you first started training. So when you first started, obviously, it's not what you're doing now, but how did you start off like training, like programming wise? Did you start off properly? Would you say properly in your terms, or like describe your first, like what your first couple of years of training actually looked like programming wise?
My first year, I don't think there was any programming. I mean, I only lifted for about 3 months, and then I barely lifted for almost a year. And again, it was just for a few months, just due to different circumstances. And when I really started back up in 92, like I said, I was benching every time I went into the gym because I thought that my bench was weak. It needed to catch up because I was benching so much less than the guys. So for probably 6 months, I was lifting, I was training, but I didn't really have a program because nobody was helping me. And I had no idea what to do except for to go in and lift weights. It wasn't until probably 93 when I got around more power lifters and saw what they were doing that I started doing progressive overload and training, each lift at least once a week and getting smarter at it. Or maybe it was the end of 92 when I started doing that.
Mm-hmm. So pretty much it was just like you said earlier, so if your max was whatever, 300 pounds, you just backed off 10 pounds every week and then just added that back. Is that kind of how it worked then? Simple?
Right. So if I wanted to do 300, if 300 was my max, I would plan for 305 at the meet. Mm-hmm. And the week before the meet, I'd hit 295. And the week before that, it would be 285. And the week before that would be 275. And I would just write it on paper and go backwards and, figure out how many weeks I had left. And that's how I'd train.
Go ahead.
Very simple, very simple. And for beginners, it works wonderfully because beginners have no idea what their actual max is. So if you set them up on a 6 or 8 week progressive overload, and suddenly, as we all know, they're all going to be a lot stronger if they're using good form and technique, mm-hmm. They can change it into a 10 or a 12 or a 14 week and keep pushing themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I remember seeing those actually when I was a kid because that's when I was really trying to bulk up, and I said, in the off season I'm going to do powerlifting training because that's what everyone did to gain mass. So I remember seeing those programs, and it's so funny that you mentioned it because I remember that there was like 12-week and 8-week, and all you had to do was just back then it was so simple. It almost looked like it didn't work. That's how simple it was.
Right. But it worked. A lot of people successfully did it for many years. But I now know, people were saying, well, it takes me a week to recover. Well, I find that I recover from the squat a lot more now that I train the squat 3 times a week than actually when I only trained it once a week.
So that leads me to my next question. What does your training look like now? And what's like kind of obviously we know the biggest difference you just said frequency, but can you outline what your current training looks like now?
So it's daily undulating periodization. So that's the big, technical term. But basically, I squat 3 times a week, and I change the volume and the intensity each day of the week. So it's undulating throughout the week, and typically it heads upward the following week. But I also then build in down weeks. So I'm not progressing upward every time I go into the gym. Throughout the week, it undulates. And then even throughout the month, it might undulate. I might work up to 80% one week and 84 the next and 87 the next. And I might go back down to 80 the week after.
And are you doing all 3 lifts 3 times a week, or are you deadlifting twice? Is there, what's the difference as far as that goes?
Well, it varies, but currently I do 3 bench, 3 squat, and 2 deadlift.
Yeah, that's pretty much same thing. Most people, anyone who follows is up and up on everything now. It's pretty much the same standard protocol, I'd say. Seems like everybody's doing that.
A lot of people that I know just squat twice a week, and a variety of people only do the deadlift once a week. But most of the people in my circle do the same type of thing as us. Part of it is because they've been influenced by myself and my husband, and another part is because he writes a lot of their training, so they're going to do more.
I'm curious, actually, because now that obviously you're much more advanced with your training compared to when you first started, and you're more advanced in your lifts, you're much stronger. You mentioned that for beginners that the type of training that you were doing was very productive. How much more of an advantage do you feel that making the training that much more complex actually adds? Is it necessary at this point in your training career? Do you feel that anybody at your level could benefit from going back to something like you were doing originally, or would it just not be productive?
I don't think it would be a good thing, except for people say they're older and their body just truly doesn't recover well. They may only want to do a lift once, maybe twice a week. They may not be able to do the volume that I can because I'm really built to squat. So it depends on the person. It depends on their lift, not just their lifting age, but their age, and also how their body adapts. I know a lot of women that can do lots and lots and lots of reps, where a lot of men can't do many reps. It just beats them up. Well, you can imagine if you take someone who wasn't doing many reps before and suddenly you try to get them to do all sorts of reps, they're going to get hurt. If someone's only been squatting once a week, I'm not going to tell them to squat 3 times. I'm going to tell them to squat twice a week first before they go to 3 times a week. So personally, I think if I went back to the way I was training, just plain old progressive overload, I think it would be bad. I like to stay at 80% or higher on my heavy days, just so that my body is always at home base. Mm-hmm. And when I used to do the progressive overload, sometimes I might be down at 60%. And though it has its time and its place, especially in bodybuilding, if you're going to do a lot more reps, with powerlifting, I don't think it's going to help me get stronger if I can take 60% and do it for 20 reps. Mm-hmm. I think it's better for me to do 80% for 5.
Yeah, and just going back on what you said, if some person feels like they recover more and they only want to do a lift once or twice a week, I mean, I think that's okay. There's so many different ways to kind of skin a cat. And you can tailor a program pretty much like what you're doing now for someone using that, that. I think that everyone was also a little bit differently in how they react to training, and I think you have to like it. Not everybody has the will to go in there and get under the squat bar 3 times a week also,
Exactly. And if you're not a power lifter, I probably would never suggest 3 times a week unless some other sport, maybe a football player in the off season would want to do that because they just want to get their hips and their legs, and it's a full body movement. It's an awesome movement. But a lot of people do it once a week because they hate the squat. But luckily I love it. So
Yeah, most guys hate squatting, and most females love squatting. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I find. I find that more females like to squat versus the men.
Wow.
Unless they're a powerlifter. Then obviously it's different.
Oh, unless they're a powerlifter. Okay.
So I guess
How
the
about
average
you?
person.
Do you like squatting?
Yeah, I do actually. I feel, what's funny? I was thinking about this the other day. My routine right now is lower body, upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body, upper body. I'm training everything 3 times a week. And on my upper body days, it almost feels like a rest day. I feel like I'm not doing anything.
There you go.
I feel like I'm going to work out that day.
Yeah, because you're not handling as much weight with your central nervous system. Yeah. Your loads being less make you just feel like, wow, I'm not having to work as hard. Also, if you're really good at something, you don't necessarily feel like you're working as hard. So if your upper body, you're real strong and you're real efficient more than you feel you are in your lower body, that's going to also make you feel like you're not working as hard.
Very true. So do you feel that using the same training protocol like indefinitely produces the best long-term results, or should there be different types of training for different types of times of the year? So basically, do you train with the DUP style training year round? Do you think that that'll produce the best long-term results?
I would say typically, yes, I do DUP year round, but where it changes is, let's just say I'm in season and I'm getting ready for a competition. If I'm squatting 3 times a week, for me, it means I'm back squatting like I compete 3 times a week, just with different volume and different intensity. If I'm in the off season, maybe I'm back squatting one of the days, maybe I'm front squatting one of the days, but I'm still squatting. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that's how I do it. Same thing with I bench. I do regular bench when I'm getting ready for a competition, but I might have, when I'm really close to competition, pretty much regular bench or long pause benches. But if I'm not getting ready for one, then it might be board presses, or I very rarely do bands or chains, but you could do that. You can do close grip. You can do really wide grip. I vary things up a lot more in the off season than I do in the in season. I like to be very competition specific.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And it's good. I think that's a sound thing, because I think a lot of people lose sight of that. If they want to become a better squatter, I think there's a time and place for that too. I think you have to do some variation in your training at some point during the year, like you said.
Definitely. But if you want to be a better back squatter to compete, then is it really helping you if you back squat once a week and you front squat once and you Zercher squat once? Because then you're teaching your body 3 different patterns, especially for new people. They're like, ooh, bands and chains, they're really cool. Let's try that. Well, it really throws off your movement patterns when you're adding in bands and chains and things like that. So I really recommend to people when they're first starting just to do the lifts the way they're meant to be. Or if you want to vary a bench press, maybe vary your grip a little or do long pauses or something like that. But don't change things up drastically when you're first learning, because you don't just get your muscles stronger. You're trying to teach your central nervous system what to do.
So if I'm trying to make a name for myself in powerlifting, do you think I should just never kind of progress from the DUP type model and just keep focusing on those 3 main lifts all year round? If I'm really trying to, like I said, make a name for myself and really trying to make as much ground as possible, as fast as possible?
I don't completely understand your question. Like, what would
if I want to be a world record holder in powerlifting in general, so should I never, even if I don't have a contest plan, should I always be squatting 3 times a week, deadlifting, whatever? Is that the best way to go about being the best in this sport?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's say you are a concert violinist. Even if you had no concerts coming up for 6 months and you like other instruments, would you not play the violin at all? Or would you at least play the violin, let's say you normally play it every day for 2 hours. Maybe you play it every other day and you play other instruments on the opposite days. That might work, but you would never not play the violin at all for 6 months if you have to come back and play a concert. Okay. So it's the same type of thing with powerlifting. If you want to be the best powerlifter, I wouldn't go 6 months where I don't do a regular back squat with everything being in competition and form. Mm-hmm. But like I was explaining, I wouldn't necessarily do competition form 3 times a week. I might only do competition form once a week, and I might do it different the other 2 days. Or maybe I back off and I only squat twice a week. So I would vary, but personally, right now, what I like is the undulating periodization, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't throw in like extra spices and different exercises and switch things up. Because I think for a lot of people, one, variety is great. It keeps you interested. And two, if you do the same thing all the time and you don't mix it up a little, then you have some muscles or partial muscle fiber bundles and everything like that aren't getting worked as much. So it's good to add the other ones in. But personally, I would always make sure at least once a week I back squatted.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Unless you were a crossover Olympic lifter, power lifter. I know a lot of those. And sometimes they'll go through 1 or 2 months where they just front squat.
Yeah, Olympic movements are something totally different though.
Exactly.
Crazy.
No, but I mean, I know people that do both. So when they're not going to be doing a powerlifting meet, they'll do just front squats and they'll focus on that for the Olympic lifting.
Yeah, so they'll be more specific toward that.
Exactly.
Got it. So in most circumstances, I mean, I know this is especially with guys, the bigger you are, the stronger you are, but you have kind of defied that logic. You know, I know a lot of guys in the gym, they're like, oh, you know, I want to improve my bench or my squat, so I'm going to gain some weight and move up a weight class and be stronger. So for me, as an example, I dieted down to bodybuilding contest level leanness for a powerlifting meet, and I just felt like the weight was just crushing me. Versus now I actually moved up a weight class and I don't have that same feeling. So how did you reach your strength levels without having to get heavy? I mean, you compete so light and you lift, 3 times body weight, 4 times body weight.
I've done 3 times raw in the squat and the deadlift. And here's the deal. I used to compete at 48 kilos, which is 105 pounds. And I did that because when I first started lifting, I weighed 102 pounds and I stayed within that weight class for, I believe it was about 7 years. And my squat and my deadlift nickeled and dimed its way up, and my bench stayed the same for about 7 years because I was getting really lean right at the end. Like when I was 108 pounds, I'd bench, this was with a shirt, 180. And then when I was 105, I could only get 170. It would, because I was dieting so hard to make it to the 105s. And then one year I did some bodybuilding type training that I thought was going to lean me out. And I was feeling better and feeling leaner. And I got on the scale and I had gained 8 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine when I, in my off season, would weigh like 112 to 114 and I'd compete at 105. And I got on the scale and I weighed 122 pounds. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I started dieting. I still had like 20 weeks or something crazy, 16 weeks before my competition. And 4 weeks out, I was only 4 pounds over. I was like, I got this. 3 weeks out, I was 4 pounds over. 2 weeks out, I was still 4 pounds over. And I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go to nationals and I'm just going to weigh 109 pounds and I'm going to compete in the other weight class. And I showed up and was so much stronger and feeling so much better. My plans before that competition were to go back down when I had more time to lose the weight. And after that competition, I was just like, you know what? My body needed to go up. And at the time, equipped, my best bench was 170. Actually, 172 that I'd done like 7 years earlier. And within 1 year, I hit 214 in the bench.
Wow. So you made more progress when you were a little bit heavier.
Yeah, I put 44 pounds on my bench in a year, and I weighed 110. And I'd been training for 8 years. It was insane. Now, my squat and my deadlift didn't go up as much as my bench because they weren't being held back as much by my dieting as my bench was. But I took my deadlift from 330 to 369 in a little over a year by going up a weight class. And pound for pound, I was stronger in the upper class. So I think it just depends on how hard it is for you to stay in your weight class. Right now, if I went up a weight class, I would be stronger, but I don't think that I would be that much stronger than I am now because I don't get very far out of my weight class. I'm usually within 3 pounds, so I don't really diet to get in my weight class, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to be shredded like you were. I'm not going to look like I'm ready to step on stage, because I think if I looked like that, I would be a lot weaker because that's not my body type.
Yeah, so you're more comfortable, I guess. So pretty much, I guess your advice would be to wherever you're comfortable, compete at.
Exactly. If you have to lose 10% of your body to get into your weight class, if you let yourself actually just be a stronger, more muscular person in the class that your body naturally wants to be at, you probably would be stronger. That's for most people. Some people genetically can be super strong while they're super lean. And they can cut a lot of weight and it doesn't seem to affect them much. But for most people, if they do a drastic cut, it affects their strength. Like you said, you just felt weak when you went down a class.
Yeah. It was really bad. I was like, I don't know, man. And then once I started eating and I moved up, I just felt so much better. And strength levels improved also, like you said.
Exactly. So if your body is naturally really lean and you're within a couple pounds of your class, then stay in it. But if you get, I stayed in mine too long when I first started. The best thing that ever happened to me was when I accidentally put on all the muscle because
accidentally.
Yeah, no, I was trying to lean out and then I got on a scale. It was like, whoa, like when your clothes is fitting better and you think you're losing weight and you get on the scale and you're way out of your weight class, it can freak you out.
I'm sure our listeners want to accidentally put on muscle.
That's one thing that I laugh about. It's like, I didn't know what I know now. Someone had told me to do 5 sets of 15 for my top weight. So I went in and I was squatting 5 sets of 15 with the weight that I could do it. And I did that until I couldn't. And then I did sets of 14 until I couldn't. And I did sets of 13. And it was insane. If I did that volume now, I'd probably kill myself. But, that
was on like squats? That was on like squats and deadlifts and stuff too, or no?
And bench. And
wow.
Here's the best part. When I was doing it for bench, then I did inclines for 3 sets of 10, slight declines for 3 sets of 10, followed by dumbbell presses. Like, why do you think my bench went like through the roof? But I was thinking, I'm going to lean out. I'm doing bodybuilding training. I'm going to get lean. I'm doing all this volume. Now I realize that when you're doing that type of volume and your last few reps are really hard, that's when you're breaking down the muscle fibers and making it so you can build bigger muscle fibers. If you're doing sets of 20 and you can do 30, your muscles aren't going to get bigger necessarily because you're not pushing them and you're not getting the micro tears in your muscle. But what I was doing was literally like 15 was all I could get until I couldn't, and then I was doing 14. So I was working really hard and getting those micro tears in my muscles, and I just kept getting bigger and bigger. I mean, like I said, it was a good thing. I actually looked better, but I had no idea I was going to gain that much weight. So
I can't even imagine going in and doing 5 sets of 15 on squats.
Yeah,
with like a max effort. I used to do that for bodybuilding, and I can't even fathom doing that right now.
Well, and mind you, when I started out, I think my equipped best at the time was maybe a 340 or 350 maybe. I started out doing like 185 or something like that because, it was pretty, or maybe it was even only 50% because it was just insane doing it. But again, someone had told me, and then, they didn't tell me only do this for a couple weeks. So I just kept doing it.
And you accidentally put on muscle. So maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
Pete, maybe that's the protocol. We figured it out here on New York Muscle Radio.
We have to do it accidentally. That's the only way.
Hey, well, I've had a lot of people when I first started lifting come up to me, guys, man, what'd you do to make your legs so big? And I was like, prayed that they wouldn't be so big. Like, it's, it just depends on your genetics. I had big legs since I was in like 9th grade. And that's just how I was genetically. They weren't fat legs, but they were muscular. And I cheerleaded, I played softball, I ran a little bit of track, I hauled wood through the snowbanks in South Dakota. I just did things that built up my legs, but that was just me naturally because other people did the same things and they were lean.
So the next question I'm really excited to ask you because, you're the best in the sport. How often do you think someone should compete in powerlifting? Like just do meets? Is there like a limit to how many meets you should do per year? Especially if their goal is to be the best powerlifter, if that's their goal to be the best. How many meets do you think someone should do? Because I know there's a lot of guys out there who, powerlifting, and they jump into so many different meets. And then I know on the other end of it, there's guys that only do 1 meet a year.
Honestly, I think that the best is probably 2 to 4. And that's for someone who's been competing for a while because it gives you time to get better, rest when you need, have an off season, everything like that. Give yourself a real time to switch things up. You can do more. I did for a short while, but it's very hard. You get little tweaks here and there. They're not injuries, but if you have another competition coming up, you have to push yourself really hard through it. And you can cause bigger injuries because you're continually getting ready and training really hard for a competition. That being said, if someone's new and it worked for me, and I know a lot of people that have done it, you're so new, you're so young and fresh in the sport. What you think is 100% at your meet, a month later might be 90%. And a month later, it might have only been 80% of what you're capable of. Because so many people if they're doing proper form and technique, and they're just starting, they'll often get stronger at an astronomical rate. So in the beginning, competing more so you're not as scared going out on the platform, so you become better at competing and not just better at lifting in the gym. I think a novice should do a minimum of twice a year and more if they can do it and if they're feeling healthy.
So what would you say is the key to longevity and health in the sport? Because obviously a lot of people that get involved in this either burn out very quickly or, by the time that they're reaching their peak, they're suffering so many injuries that it kind of takes them out of the sport. What's really the key to lasting?
I think there have been a few things for me. The first one is being drug-free makes a big difference. I know different people who have said, they've aided themselves and it helps them to push themselves harder at the moment. But lots of times when things happen, then it continues to happen and happen and happen. Their bodies break down sooner. So I think being drug-free definitely makes a difference. Being aware of your body, listening to your body. So if your body's screaming and yelling and saying, this hurts really bad, not, oh, this is hard, not, this is exhausting, I pushed myself, but this feels wrong, listen to it and do something about it. I guess the lucky thing for me, I say lucky, when I tweaked my back once, there was a chiropractor in the gym I was training at, and I found that going to the chiropractor if I felt like I was out, if I squat and I feel myself shifting to the left a few times, then I know, you know what, I need an adjustment. If I'm training, especially, again, not using age as an excuse, but I've also been competing for 25 years. So lots of wear and tear on the body. If something
That's amazing
feels wrong,
considering you're only 21.
Yeah. Well, thank you, but no, not quite. I will call a massage therapist. So I think taking care of your body, we beat our bodies up. We make it do insane things. So when it's screaming at you and telling you that something's wrong, rest or ice, go to the chiropractor, go to the massage therapist, go to the physical therapist. If something feels wrong, take care of it. Don't just push through it. Because I think that's why a lot of people get so beat up and don't last long. It's all this do or die. I can be tough. I can push through it. I can work harder than everyone else. And I think if you work smart, push yourself really hard when you can, but if your body's screaming at you, be smart and back off. Check your ego at the door, and sometimes you have to not compete in a competition that you wish you could, because it's more important not to, so you can heal.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Susie, thank you so much again for coming on. Where can our listeners find out more about you and Matt? And, I met you guys, like I said, at Lane's camp, and you guys are just awesome people. It was awesome to be around you that time. So let our listeners know where they could find you and they could learn more about you guys and what you're doing, because I think if anybody wants to improve in this sport, you got to be around great people, and Susie and Matt are great people. So tell us, listeners, where they could find you.
Well, thank you, Anthony. That's really sweet of you to say. We enjoyed meeting you. I wish we'd had even more time to hang out. Our gym is Supreme Sports Performance and Training. Everyone knows us as SSPT. So you can go on Facebook, and we have supremesportspt.com is our website. And on Facebook, we're Supreme Sports PT. On Instagram, although I must apologize, I don't post very frequently, and it's not necessarily instantly either. It's Susie52kg, so Sue, SIOUXZ, the numbers 52 and kg like kilograms for Instagram. And I guess that's the best place.
Perfect. Susie, again, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm just super excited for everyone to hear all the knowledge you dropped in this. And again, congrats on all your accomplishments in the sport. I just never put two and two together, I guess. And when you see it on paper, you're like, my God, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I was hanging out and making jokes with the world's strongest woman.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I wish you all the best, continued success, and make sure you let me know when you put this up. I'd like to hear it and catch some of your next ones going on.
Perfect. Big guy, it's your turn, buddy.
All right, guys, it's Pete and Anthony with Susie Gary, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.